India didn't just lose a confrontation, it lost something far more dangerous: certainty. For years, New Delhi operated on an assumption so widely accepted it was rarely questioned, that India's rise was inevitable. That time itself was on India's side. And that military pressure, when needed, could always restore balance. But, recent events didn't just challenge that belief. They exposed how fragile it really was. Because in modern warfare, outcomes are not measured only in territory or casualties. They're measured in credibility, in confidence, in who controls escalation, and who merely reacts to it. And when that control slips, the consequences don't arrive all at once. They accumulate quietly, in procurement rooms, in alliance negotiations, in the private calculations of rivals. This is not a story about a single clash. It's a story about what happens when a rising power discovers it cannot choose the terms of its next conflict. The illusion of leverage. India's strategic position has always been unique and uncomfortable. To the west, Pakistan, smaller, poorer, but permanently mobilized. To the north, China, economically vast, industrially dense, and strategically patient. To the east and south, oceans that promise trade, but also exposure. For decades, India believed this geography could be managed through selective pressure, limited confrontations, calibrated shows of force, diplomatic ambiguity. The idea was simple: push where resistance seems weaker, regain initiative, reinforce deterrence. But deterrence only works if the other side believes you can control what comes next. And that belief is no longer universal, because honestly, recent confrontations didn't just produce military results. They produced data on readiness, on coordination, on decision speed, on how systems perform under stress. And once that data exists, it doesn't disappear. Why this time was different. In the past, regional crises often ended with ambiguity. Each side claimed victory. Each side saved face. But this time, something changed. Instead of restoring confidence, the outcome raised new doubts, not just among adversaries but among partners. Questions began circulating quietly. How resilient are India's command and control systems under pressure? How integrated are its sensors, shooters, and decision-makers? How quickly can India absorb losses without escalation spiraling out of control? These are not political questions. They are procurement questions, alliance questions, and they matter far more than headlines. Because you see, modern war is no longer about single platforms. It's about ecosystems. The system problem. Here is the uncomfortable reality of 21st century military power. You cannot buy superiority one weapon at a time. Fighter jets alone do not win wars. Neither do missiles. Neither do drones. What matters is integration. Early warning aircraft feeding data to fighters. Satellites linking to command centers. Electronic warfare blinding the enemy before the first shot. Air defenses tied into a unified data network. Only a handful of countries have built this successfully: the United States, and one close partner, after decades of alignment, trust, and dependence. India does not have this system, not fully, not cohesively, and not cheaply. And well, that is where India's dilemma begins. The temptation of American hardware. On paper, the solution seems obvious. Buy American. Advanced fighters, integrated missile defense, high-end drones, networked battle management systems. But, the problem isn't availability. It's control. American military exports come with conditions: technical, political, and operational, usage restrictions, software dependencies, update permissions, data access. These systems are designed for allies who operate within a US-led strategic framework. India does not. India wants autonomy, strategic flexibility, the freedom to confront both Pakistan and China when necessary. But those goals conflict directly with how US military ecosystems are structured, and Washington knows it. The risk Washington sees, Well, from the American perspective, India presents a paradox. It is useful, but risky. On one hand, India balances China geographically. On the other, any India-Pakistan conflict risks turning US-supplied systems into test subjects, not against outdated adversaries, but against Chinese-linked technology, doctrine, and countermeasures. Every radar lock, every missile intercept, every electronic warfare exchange becomes a data point. Data China would be eager to study. And if advanced Western systems perform poorly, or are neutralized, the consequences extend far beyond South Asia. They affect credibility everywhere. That is why hesitation is growing. Quietly, behind closed doors. The fighter jet dilemma. Advanced fighters symbolize power, but they also concentrate risk. If such aircraft underperform, the damage isn't just tactical, it's psychological. Pilots lose confidence, allies question assumptions, rivals revise timelines, and modern air combat is brutally unforgiving. Low readiness rates, high maintenance demands, extreme dependency on logistics and software. These platforms are not plug-and-play solutions. They are long-term commitments. India understands this, which is why alternatives are being explored. So, why aren't Europe and Russia the answers here? Well, European systems do offer quality, sure, but not the scale that's needed. They just don't have the industrial depth to ramp up production quickly, replace losses, or really sustain a long, high-intensity conflict. Plus, costs are higher. Supply chains are, honestly, pretty fragile, and integration is still only partial. Now, Russia presents a different kind of problem. While it's generally willing to sell, it's facing more and more constraints, economically, industrially, and strategically. Russia's priorities have shifted too. Its most advanced systems? They're not really for export anymore. And, well, its relationship with China has started to outweigh those old legacy ties elsewhere. So, in the end, India just can't rely on any single external supplier to build a coherent war-fighting ecosystem, which, really leaves just one option: the domestic mirage. When external paths narrow, nations, tend to turn inward. Domestic defense programs accelerate. Prototypes multiply. Capabilities are announced. On paper, progress looks rapid. On slides, systems appear competitive. But honestly, war is not fought on paper. Real integration takes decades. It requires failure, iteration, and, brutal honesty. And political pressure rarely rewards patience. This creates a dangerous gap between appearance and reality. A gap adversaries are quick to exploit. The China factor. China is not waiting. Its advantage is not just technological. It is structural. A dense industrial base, short development cycles, mass production capacity. Where others optimize for perfection, China optimizes for sufficiency at scale. And increasingly, it leads, or matches, across emerging domains, hypersonic systems, space denial, unmanned platforms, electronic and electromagnetic warfare. This does not mean China is unbeatable, but it does mean that time favors those who can produce, replace, and adapt faster. India currently cannot match that pace. The strategic trap. Here is the trap India faces. Escalation risks exposure. Restraint risks erosion. Every confrontation now tests not just resolve, but systems. Every crisis becomes a credibility audit, and rivals understand this, which means future pressure may not aim to defeat India outright, but to exhaust it, to stretch its procurement, to strain its alliances, to force hard choices with no good answers. Why this matters now? This moment is not about humiliation, it is about trajectory. Rising powers succeed when they align ambition with capacity. They fail when confidence outpaces control. India still has options, but honestly, none are easy, none are quick, and none allow shortcuts. the real danger isn't war. It's miscalculation, driven by the need to prove something that no longer comes automatically. Because once certainty disappears, every move becomes riskier. Every signal is scrutinized, and every future conflict becomes harder to manage. And that is really the most important outcome of all.